So next up we have Justin. Cece, this is the first chapter. So we're going to retell it, and then we're going to do a little bit of probing and get some comments for Justin.
Am I doing the retelling?
Are you ready for the retelling?
Yes.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Lyra Lightfoot. We meet her. She is in the middle of cooking. She is cooking something in a cauldron, and the cauldron is bubbling in that sort of like we all know kind of fashion of trying to read an old recipe. The lettering is a little off. It scribbles, not necessarily great handwriting. So there's a lot of deciphering, a lot of humor behind what she needs to do, how she needs to, the ingredients that she needs to do. While she is like laboring over this, we learn more about her, that she loves to read. She loves books, not necessarily cookbooks and not necessarily cooking, because it takes away from the things that she loves to do, which is reading and relaxing. We also learn that her space is very cluttered and untidy. I didn't quite know if this was because she was cooking and the kitchen was a mess. In the hunt to find salt, we get to meet her fox, and I believe it's Spindle is the name of the fox, but it is a snow fox and it is a pet, and it was antagonizing her by hiding the salt underneath the couch. We also learn that Lyra is super strong because with one hand she lifts the love seat or reading chair to find her silver fox, which is super fun. And then upon continuing the recipe, which she discovers that this particular recipe has 3 more ingredients. She needs to wait 8 hours while it continues to boil or marinate or cook. She also learns that there are 3 hidden ingredients because this recipe comes alive and it tells her that there are 3 things that she needs to find. She's a little bit on the fence because 1, she had just woken up from a nap, and 2, she also is intent on getting back to her reading and isn't necessarily up for an adventure, but she discovers that this recipe will self-implode/destruct within those 8 hours. So she is left with this time crunch of either she finds these ingredients or she doesn't. Thinking that she can maybe just find one of these ingredients and come back to it later, she learns that she cannot do that. So in the end, Lyra decides to, believe this was the last line, follow a recipe as she sets on this adventure to find these ingredients for this dish she is cooking.
Good. So now we're going to ask some factual questions, right? We need a basis in facts to support the story going forward. And my belief very strongly is all these questions have to be answered. I'm going to ask Cece some questions. And Kim, you and I can chime in. What's she cooking?
A stew.
Okay, it's a stew. Why is she cooking this stew?
It's an important day and the stew matters.
Go on.
And there's something to be celebrating. I'm not quite sure what, but there is something to be celebrating.
So it's a celebratory stew. So why this stew and not, I don't know, roast turkey, whatever you would make on a celebration day?
The stew is important.
I heard
that. I don't. That was a part of some of my feedback. So
I'm not going to press the point, but you get the idea, Justin.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Lyra. How would you describe Lyra Lightfoot, and is there anyone you can think of that she reminds you of?
Okay, honestly, Lyra reminded me of a late 20s, early 30s millennial who just loves to be a homebody. She has her cat or dog or little pet. They're best friends, and she just loves a good book, chilling out, and staying home.
Is she going to find the ingredients or not?
I think so.
Okay, so there's going to be a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
What's the happy ending going to look like?
I believe that she's hosting somebody. This is my guess, that she is hosting somebody important, someone within her life. I'm not sure who. And just in the nick of time, she will have these 3 final ingredients that will make the stew just the best stew her and this mystery person will have, and the end.
So we're trying to figure out 2 things: how confident she is, how confident Cece is, and then whether she's right or not. So those are 2 separate dimensions. So, well, I'm just going to point this out. A celebration to me entails multiple people, and yet Cece, and probably naturally, shifted to focused on a dinner for 2, which then sort of conjures notions of romance. So the reason why we bring this up is because it's really important to set these reader expectations so they know what kind of story they're in for, right? And all of that follows from this one question: why this stew? Why is it so important? Why tonight? Right. So I could go off, but let me pause for a second. I'm going to ask Kim the same questions. So Kim, why is she cooking this particular stew on this particular at this particular time?
It's important.
All right, let's not belabor the point. There's a all right, Justin, do you have any questions for Cece? Things you want? Oh, sorry, I forgot one question. Did you laugh out loud during this chapter? Yes, it was
A lot.
very funny.
It was so
I really
funny.
liked the first part. There's so much funny stuff in there. Okay. Justin, do you have any questions for Cece?
No, there's interesting takes.
What
Yeah,
was
there's
interesting?
I wrote down, I did not intend for her to seem so strong when she moves the chair, because it's just like a reading chair. But like I will try to clarify that. I was
Literally
like, oh, okay.
picked up the chair one-handed because there was salt on it. Reminded me of an ogre from Shrek, kind of.
Yeah, that's what I literally thought,
Yeah.
like Hulk. Like,
That's interesting though. I've got my mind spinning on that a little bit, as maybe I can make that intentional, but we'll see about that. I was not planning on that in particular.
So can you answer the question of why is this stew so important on this particular day?
I absolutely can, but I have a follow-up question, which is, I mean, is it necessary that I reveal that in this first chapter?
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta give the reader something, because that's the engine that's going to drive the whole story. That drives her decision.
Okay. All right. The original version of this story that I wrote a long time ago, it's revealed in the end that this is a recipe from her mom, who has since passed away, and that she is making this recipe on her birthday, on her mom's birthday.
It's her dead mom's anniversary. Good.
Mm-hmm. But that was something that I did not reveal until the very end of the story. So I will try and figure out a way to maybe balance that, or just give in and, you know, say exactly why she's doing this right up front.
And who's who's going to eat this stew?
Her. This
Just by herself.
Her and her mom's so-and-so grave, kind of thing like that. There's a tree out back behind her cottage. It's a whole other thing, but it's kind of how elves in this world pass on, is less of like, you know, burial kind of thing, and more of like turn into nature kind of thing. So there's a tree behind the cottage that she's going to enjoy the dish with.
This is very interesting. I see Kim nodding. Cece. It's super important that we get a sense of this going into this, because this is why the stew is so significant, right? Cece and I seem to be thinking there was some kind of dinner party or a romantic evening. Normally, when you make a stew, I have no idea if it's normal or not. But the expectation when you're preparing a big meal is that people are going to join you in it, right? So I don't know how to say this in a constructive way, but when you all right, I'll just use this word. When you mislead people like that, it sort of screws up their minds, right? They're unable to follow the actual story. So
Okay.
in a way, what we're trying to do is we're trying to head off wrong expectations. So we're trying to set correct and reasonable expectations, not giving everything away, right? But giving enough away that the reader is in the right ballpark, right? The reader knows the boundaries of the story and what kind of what's going to kind of happen going forward. It's super important, Justin, because I was still thinking that, she was inviting over all these family and friends, and this stew was merely to impress them. I had no clue had anything to do with her mom until you just said that. And it's a good rationale for making this special stew to honor her mother. And then the question becomes, that sets things up, and then the follow-on question is, why this stew, right? Why does she need to make this stew that's missing these ingredients and self-destructs of all things? So you have to balance out, you have to give her enough motivation that she's going to go ahead and, even though maybe she doesn't want to, she wants to go back to her book, she's going to go ahead and pursue the missing ingredients on a timer, a literal bomb kind of timer. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right, so let's do some more. That's the major thing we have to work on, but let's do some more comments and also praise. So CC, more comments?
Yeah, I adored this chapter. I absolutely loved it. I laughed out loud multiple times. The initial opening with the sigil kind of made me think of like AI right now, where I don't know if you guys have seen the news and like articles, but there's like people are having relationships with AI. So that's kind of like where my mind immediately went. And I think you do this really, I don't know, this very creative thing where you introduce a concept within your fantasy world and your writing that just feels reflective of what's going on in the real world. And I think you do a really good job of that. I know you left some questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and answer them. I think Lyra is very relatable. As someone who enjoys cooking, enjoys reading, I don't know, I just felt as a female character, she was very relatable to me. And I enjoyed her a lot in her inner monologue. I also enjoyed that we were dropped into the chapter. So she was like in the middle of making this. It felt like the right place. And the first chapter, actually, I was kind of disappointed that I didn't get to continue the adventure. So yes, I want to read on. Her motivations are almost justified. I know we had just talked about like why she's making this. I don't know if you need to reveal every single detail, but I do think that who she's having it with and why is maybe all we need. Like she's having stew with her mother for her mom's birthday. That's maybe all we need to know. I don't know. I think the stakes feel cozy for me. Like the stakes are this self-combusting sigil recipe thing. I think that's perfect on brand for cozy fantasy. And yes, everything is super humorous. I love, again, very, very little feedback. Honestly, just the why.
Yeah, that one little why gives us a lot of energy to drive us forward. Otherwise, she's just nuts, right? Not nuts in any kind of pathological way, but nuts in that she's so random. We don't understand why she's doing the things she's doing, why she would pursue this route I wouldn't. So what Cece said raises this question that I was thinking about. Is the recipe a character in the story, right? Or is it just like a machine and pre-programmed to do what it wants? I would think about that too. I don't know where it's headed at going forward, but she's clearly acting. The recipe is clearly acting against her, right? It's preventing her from getting what she wants. And we sort of have to ask ourselves is, does the recipe have agency? Because I think that's where this is headed, right? My expectation is that the recipe does have some kind of agency and is trying to get something from her. That I don't want you to give away, right? But that's another seed that could have been planted. All right. Thank you, Cece. Kim?
So yeah, this was such a grade A cozy vibe for me. Like the setting, the talking parchment, the pet fox. It was like almost all playing out like an animated anime fantasy in my head, and it was just like I was all for it. Again, like the stakes just need to be fleshed out a little bit more. Like that was just my biggest critique is the why she's making the recipe. And for me, I feel like Lyra's motivation to go adventuring when it appears she's more of a homebody would feel a little bit more justified if I knew what was at stake. So that's really all I was looking for. I really liked the first interjection, especially when Winkland marries one of his wedding gifts from the first marriage. Like that was just so wonderful, and everything about that first one was fabulous. I liked the second one, but I do think it was a little bit too long, and it kind of took me out of the flow of the story. I think it can certainly stay. I just think it might need to be trimmed up a little bit. But overall, I would certainly keep reading. Like I said, it was playing out like a movie in my head, and I was there for it. So I certainly would have kept reading on. And then with the stakes, and it just is only going to make this more impactful. So I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thanks, Kim. So what was that? What's the linkage between that first? So CC didn't do this. So can you retell just that first paragraph that entered the story?
The what?
The guy who played chess with his.
Oh yeah, when he Winkland, I think was that I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Winkland, yeah, and he eventually ended up marrying the inanimate object he brought to life, and then took a second wife from one of the wedding gifts of the marriage to the first inanimate object, and it was just comedic gold.
I mean, that was hilarious.
Yeah,
right?
it
He
was
invented
absolutely fabulous.
he invented a mechanical chess partner, and I guess they fell in love and he married it.
Justin, I would almost, if you ever wanted to make spin-offs, I would read a novella.
Well, the issue is, I mean, in a way, I found that more appealing than the second story.
It was
Could
great.
just be me. But so the issue is, does that vignette, which is a sort of a prologue / mood setting device, does it compete with the story that follows, or does it complement the story that follows? It is funny. They're both funny. So what's the relationship between that vignette and the story?
Because for me, it was kind of bringing to life the parchment or the recipe, like coming to life, and kind of was giving me background information on the magic system in this world, but in a humorous way. So that's kind of what I was taking out of it. Like I said, the second one, I didn't take too much out of it, but it was humorous. So I think it can stay, but it just would need to be cut down, in my opinion.
Can you describe the second one for us, please?
The second one was just kind of the description of clocks and how they kept time and how that has changed. And like I said, it was funny, but I didn't feel like the humor throughout complemented the story as well as the first vignette did. So like I said, I like the interjections. I like how they kind of give you this new perspective into all the goings on in this world. But sometimes it's like you're almost reading a different story. So that one kind of was a little bit jarring because I felt like it was too long and it was taking me out of the story that I was in to hear a different story, if that makes sense.
So what would you like to see for the second interlude?
Just a lot shorter, I think. I think maybe just a paragraph. Because I like how they kind of take you out of the story for a little bit, but I don't want to be I don't want my momentum to be completely derailed. And when you've got a couple paragraphs going into it, it kind of does that. So I think the second one can maybe get by with a paragraph rather than, I think it was like 3.
Or there's an alternative as well. You could align the second one much closer to the theme of this story.
Mhm.
The theme to me is that these artificial constructs are stymieing their creators or their users. It's an avenue to explore. All right, so I think we covered the main thing, right? There's just a little bit of explanation that really nails down why this stew at this time. And it's up to you to set the boundary on how much you're going to reveal versus how much you're going to keep hidden, so long as the reader is satisfied that they understand what Lyra's rationale is for pursuing this stew, right? Especially since the stew seems to be, not working with her. It's kind of working against her. And then, of course, the more this ties into the story about, so the stew's opposition naturally should tie into her mother. Right? And then you have a nice, coherent piece. And again, the reason why we're underlining coherence is because that's what helps people remember the story and for it to have an impact. Otherwise, if the threads are tied together, it stays in a piece in people's heads. The looser the threads are, the more it's likely to dissolve and float away and not remain in people's memory and have an impact. And that kind of memory impact is what people are buying, in addition to the laughs, right? Laughs plus impact equals value. Okay. And it was very funny, right? All right, thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, thank you guys. I think Cece's note gave me a great idea for how to interject more of the stakes into this without giving away that her mom has since passed. And I think that giving away that it is a dinner with her mother, but not saying that she's gone, is enough to say, like, to convince people that, like, okay, well, dinner with mom is, yeah, for sure, you want to impress mom. Like, people, that, at least that's how I feel at the moment, is I think that that's enough to get people in on this.
So let's use that insight and try to build a quick MCS around that.
Okay, let's go for it. All right. In the fantasy town of Rookhaven lives both humans and elves. One particular elf, Lyra Lightroot, is following a recipe given to her by her mother that she has never once used. On the day of her mother's birthday, she's preparing this recipe to share with her mother, but figures out that she doesn't have all of the ingredients that are needed for the recipe. When the recipe comes to life, to share with her ingredients, the recipe also shares with her that it will not reveal the ingredients until each one in sequence is collected. And once the ingredients have been, once the time has run out, the recipe itself, the spell that is given its life, will end as well. So if she does not gather all of the ingredients and all of the instructions about how to finish this particular recipe, she'll never be able to make it truly like her mother does. Lyra ventures out to collect all three ingredients, in which she has to face her own anxieties about facing the real world instead of the worlds that she reads about in her books. And each one bringing her closer to experiencing a real adventure instead of just the ones that have been presented to her. But she succeeds in doing so, collects the ingredients, and brings them back to create this stew called the Memorable, which focuses on revitalizing memories that someone has once either forgotten or have dulled over time. She shares the stew with her mother, who is a tree in the back of her yard, to relive the memories of when she was once alive, and finishes by saying, "Happy birthday, Mom. Thank you for the recipe."
Great, very cozy, Justin. So let's ask Justin a question. What's your first question off the top of your head? Kim?
again, I'm sorry. It does the parchment like coming to life. Does that play, like, was that mentioned, or like what big of a role does that character play? I mean, maybe he doesn't even play that, or it plays that big of a role, but I didn't know if maybe that was something.
So it was mentioned, but it was a little bit buried.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. Can you answer that, Justin? Does the parchment have agency?
To some extent, like I said I think in the beginning thing, sigillites, they have a specific like task, and then once they've completed that task, they evaporate, or whatever. But this was a recipe written by Lyra's mother, and the whole use was actually to get Lyra out of the house. As she was dying, she felt that her daughter would become a bit of a homebody.
That's really important.
Which is something I was going to reveal later, but if I
Well,
need to reorganize these things, I don't want to.
Something with
like
that
say
kind of
exactly why.
significance. Something with that kind of significance has to appear in this minimal version.
Okay.
Right? That's the first time it's been brought up in this conversation, this group. Super important. That is the kind of thing that you organize a story around. So there's two underlying tent poles supporting this story. One, it's her mother's birthday, right? And she has to make the stew to honor her mother. Great. The second organizing pole is that her mother purposely left this recipe to get her to get out of the house. Right? Between those two things, the entire story follows. So they have to come first. Not necessarily in the sequencing of your MCS, but first in your mind. And we have to see both of those things at work in the first chapter at some level. CC, do you have a question for Justin? My question then is, why are each of these three ingredients special to her mother? Or now I'm going to change it. Why are each of these ingredients special to her mother's plan of getting her out of the house?
So two of the ingredients are active ingredients, like to actually make the kind of, the abilities of the stew to come together. Not really household things that you'd find, in your regular cupboard. And then something that she's told kind of in the last scene is that one of them is just an ingredient for flavor because her mom knew it was her favorite.
Okay, so one of them's covered, right? It's kind of the reward. Try to think about how these other two ingredients are going to force her to interact with the world or fulfill her mother's wishes. Right? Is there an answer there?
Yeah, I mean, each ingredient has something. The first one, I think I submitted an early version of this a long time ago, where I might have been said like what kind of happens with the solo root stuff, but it's in Eleanor Goss's garden, and this is one of those things that gets kind of woven together in this book. But Goss, which I've submitted part of this story too, Goss and Lyra's mother were close friends. So that like each kind of like ingredient is something to get like Lyra, like, to Goss to like kind of reignite that kind of friendship that has fallen off.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
Whatever.
So now the challenge is surfacing these things so the reader can appreciate Lyra's mother's attempts to help her. The funny's great. Now we're going to layer on sort of meaning. And meaning comes through story. And story only works to the extent the reader gets it. Right? So they have to be able to pick up on what's going on. And then the last note I wanted to say is, if this is a long story, then three ingredients are fine. If this is a short story, you're probably going to have to cut it down so there's just one ingredient. So that's going to depend on the number of words you want to spend on this story. All right, thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, thank you guys. This one's going through its metamorphosis right now, so I'm excited to see where it goes with it. I'm going to challenge myself for next class. I want to bring in a second chapter just to move forward. I mean, here's the thing. I want to get done both a revision of this chapter and a first version of a second chapter before next class to challenge myself. What would you rather me bring in for a presentation?
You can bring in the second chapter with the agreement that you're going to put a really solid 1 paragraph, 1.5 paragraphs of orientation at the top of it.
Okay.
You want to know why she's making the stew, what the first ingredient is, what she has to do to get it, right? And then what the meaning is of that quest, how that quest is going to resonate with the overall cozy theme of mother-daughter caring. In this case, mother tree daughter caring, but still a mom, still cares about her daughter. Makes sense?
Cool. Sounds great.
All right, awesome. Good work, Justin.
Bardsey delivers the tools, guidance, and support you need to produce compelling novels. Our well-researched and thoroughly tested approach includes our minimum complete story, a 90-second exercise that keeps your writing on track while fueling creativity. Bardsey Publishability Index, a 23-dimension checklist that offers attainable goals and provides actionable feedback. And our brand new comprehensive character developer that helps you construct unforgettable characters. Come see for yourself at bardsey.com today. Try our workshop or enter our first chapter contest. Then, when you're ready, Elite Membership delivers writing groups, personal coaching, and a curated community. With Bardsey, your work will captivate everyone, from agents to publishers, and most importantly, your readers.